Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Sharing Stories from 1977 Second Annual Student Showcase. I am Miranda Ruzinsky, your moderator for the evening, a promotion I jokingly credit to Dr. Young, Dr. Zarnow, and Dr. Davidson, who mentored me during my time as an undergraduate intern with the project. Last year, I was up here speaking about my research experience, and now as a doctoral student in women's history at the University of Houston, I'm thrilled to return in a new role. This project didn't just introduce me to public history, it gave me the skills and confidence that continue to guide me in my academic journey. Tonight, however, is not about me. It's about the remarkable students whose hard work and dedication have driven this nationally recognized, award winning digital humanities project. They've taken on vital tasks such as writing biographies, analyzing demographic data, cleaning data sets, and conducting oral histories. Their contributions are instrumental in fulfilling this project's ambitious goals. Next slide, please. This project, launched by Dr. Nancy Beck Young and Dr. Leandra Zarnow in 2017, was inspired by the 40th anniversary of the 1977 National Women's Conference in Houston. This watershed moment in U.S. history brought together 2,000 elected delegates from all U.S. states and territories. They collaborated on a 26-plank national plan of action addressing issues such as healthcare, employment, civil rights, and equality for women of all backgrounds. They submitted the Spirit of Houston report to President Jimmy Carter and set the stage for federal policy on women's issues in the coming decades. Despite its significance, the conference has often been overlooked. Described by Gloria Steinem as, quote, the most important event nobody knows about, Sharing Stories from 1977 aims to challenge that epithet and shine a spotlight on the conference's enduring impact. The main goal is to publish biographies and demographic data of all the delegates by the 50th anniversary in 2027. Ultimately, the project aspires to capture the 150,000 plus participant stories, including those of state/territory meeting attendees, volunteers, reporters, torch relay runners, dignitaries, and even observers. It will also trace the political connections and legislative legacies of the conference. Next slide, please. As you can see from this map depicting our partner institutions around the U.S., the project utilizes a national crowdsourcing network powered by invaluable student researchers and 38 educators. As of today, more than 2,000 students in 19 states have contributed. Today, we will meet 18 of these students who have been nominated by their professors to talk about their work on the project. Our presentation order will move geographically from a focus on delegates who were in the Midwest to those in the Mid-Atlantic and finally to those in the South. Presentations will be both live and through recorded videos, as some of our students could not join us tonight. At the end of the program, we will have a 10 to 15-minute question and answer session from the audience. If you have a question throughout the presentation, feel free to drop it in the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen and we will address it in the post session. Please note that the presentations may take the full hour and we will understand if you are unable to stay for the Q&A discussion at the end. Let's get started. Our first student is Jillian Cato from Idaho State University. Her mentor is Dr. Marie Stango.
Hi, everyone. I'm here to present to you today my delegate from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Juanita Renteria. I had so much fun, honestly, researching her and learning more about her because I learned and I admire her greatly because she fought for not only both women's rights, but also migrants' rights. She did a lot. I could not fit everything onto this presentation. I couldn't fit everything onto the bio, honestly, but I've covered a few things here. For example, for women's rights, she fought for marriage equality, specifically for property, disability pay for pregnant women, and time off work to raise children. And for migrants' rights, she fought for better education, better training, and better access to volunteer centers. She believed that if they did not receive these things, they would not be able to break out of the cycle of poverty. She's also very active in her community. She hosted rallies such as one in 1972 that basically gave resources for the three topics I listed above for migrant workers to hopefully give them a better standing in society. And she's also part of several organizations like the United Migrant Opportunity Service and the Government Committee for Spanish Speaking. She was also not afraid to take anything from anyone, even politicians who were dragging their feet and providing relief to the people who needed it. That's actually where I got her quote from that I put on her bio. Next slide, please. As for my experience, I am not a history major. Uh, I'm an accounting major with a history minor, so I understand that's a different from a lot of you here. But I still think this experience is applicable to me in my, well, not only my job, but also in my life. Uh, for my job, my research, the research skills I learned here could help me a lot with tax research, such as verifying sources and being able to think critically about the data, trying to figure out which actually applies and which doesn't. There were two Juanita Renterias I had to sift through. So I had to figure out which one was my delegate and which one wasn't. And as for my life, I still think her fight is relevant today. We are regressing, and it's a toss up as to which rights we're losing next. And that's why I wanted to do this. I wanted to make sure that her fight wouldn't be forgotten. And I want to make sure that her story could inspire others just as much as it inspired me. I wish I could talk about her more, but that's all that I got for today. Thank you for listening.
Our next student is Emily Hill from the University of Akron. Her mentor is Dr. Gregory Wilson.
Hello, my name's Emily, and this past December I graduated with a master's degree in applied history and a certificate in public humanities from the University of Akron. And I'd like to thank the graduate program advisor and my project supervisor, Dr. Gregory Wilson, for his endless patience and support. So to fulfill the capstone project requirement for my program, I did research on 10 of the 56 Ohio delegates. Their names are Dorothy Duke, Susan Frampton, Nina Rose Hatfield, Eleanor Israel, Ava Janik, Chestor Lee, Francis Lucas, Norma Marcier, Lana Morsky, and Stephanie Varga. The Ohio delegation was unique. Instead of being divided into two factions, like most other delegations were, Ohio was actually divided into three. There was the pro-ERA, pro-family, anti-ERA, and pro-family, pro-ERA factions. So there were three of them. All 10 of the women that I researched had very eventful lives, but Eleanor Israel and Dorothy Duke were particularly interesting to me. Next slide, please. Eleanor Israel was born in Akron, Ohio, and grew up in a very strong Catholic household. And this influenced her later beliefs regarding abortion and the importance of the family structure. She was very active in pro-life organizations and published multiple editorials in the Akron Beacon Journal throughout her life. At the time of her delegation to the National Women's Conference, she was the committee chairperson of the Right to Life of Greater Akron. And her faith and drive to protect life led her to participate in the local community action agency, as well as accept the position of pro-life coordinator at St. Bernard's Church. While at the NWC, she was a member of the pro-family, anti-ERA faction of the delegation and was very vocal against custody rights for lesbian mothers. However, her belief in the sanctity of life extended beyond the abortion debates at the NWC and outweighed her opposition to homosexuality. She was a licensed practicing nurse during the AIDS crisis, and that outweighed her experiences during the AIDS crisis outweighed the opposition that she felt. In a 2016 Akron Beacon Journal article, Israel actually criticized the Reagan administration for failing to act and accused the Reagans of homophobia. And then the next, same slide.
Thank you, Emily. You hit your 3-minute spot, but that was great. Thank you very much. Oh, our next student is Kylie Black, whose mentor is Dr. Kyle Ciani from Illinois State University.
Hi, my name is Kylie Black, and I am a senior history major at Illinois State University. In my class on women's history in the United States since 1865, we researched delegates from the state of Illinois. We worked in small groups, and each group was assigned 3 delegates. Our group chose to split into groups of 2, with each pair focusing on 1 delegate, and we used our classwork time to check in and help each other during the research process. My delegate was Ann Lackey, who was born in Milwaukee in 1949, and I was overwhelmed by the amount of advocacy she's accomplished during her life. After completing her undergraduate degree at Northwestern University in 1970, she began working in publishing. There, she personally encountered issues surrounding equality for women in the workforce, which became her focus at the 1977 conference. Lackey coordinated the Equal Employment Opportunities Committee at the Illinois State Meeting, and she also served as the co-coordinator for the Chicago chapter of the National Organization for Women. After the 1977 conference, she became the executive director of the advocacy group Women Employed, where she participated in lobbying for the Family Medical Leave Act, the Civil Rights Act of 1991, and the Illinois Pregnancy Fairness Law. In 1999, Governor George Ryan appointed her to the Illinois Commission on the Status of Women. Today, Lackey still lives in Chicago, and she continues her work in advocacy. She's dedicated her life to the bettering of women's position in the workplace, and her policy work continues to impact women throughout Illinois and the country. It was an honor to learn more about her and her impact on society.
Hi, my name is Alex Jones. I use he, him pronouns, and I am a junior here at Eastern Illinois University. I'm a history major with a teacher's licensure, and I'm also pursuing a geography minor, and today I'll be sharing about my experience with the Sharing Stories from 1977 project. In my class, my delegate was Roberta Johnson, who is the 47th delegate for the International Women's Year Conference and the 57th district and state treasurer for the National Women's Conference. She also was part of a group called La Leche League in her town, which was a support group for new moms. I also had the opportunity to interview Ann Lackey, who was also at the National Women's Conference, and it was really interesting to be able to actually talk to somebody and to get to know them and what they did. So for my experiences as a beginner in the history field and with research, it was very time consuming, and that's something I wasn't used to as a student. I also wanted to find as much as I possibly could, and I would end up getting stuck in like this research cycle, and I wouldn't stop until I found something, which means I fell into a lot of dead ends. But when I did find something, it was extremely rewarding, and those breakthrough moments where the dots were connecting and the story was starting to form right before my eyes was super cool. And it was just really important for me to be able to preserve this history, especially in a time like today, and to be able to give these women their voices back. Thank you so much for listening.
My name is Izzy Gardiner, and I'm a junior at Merrimack College. Last semester, I took the US Women's History class, which was taught by Dr. Deborah Michaels. In this class, we took part in the Sharing Stories project. I really enjoyed this project, as not only did it develop my researching skills, but it also really helped me understand what was life like for women in the 1970s period. I was given Margaret Stacey Kling to research. She was very opinionated, just like me, to be honest. She was always writing articles in newspapers, and she also spoke on TV shows in her local town. She had a huge interest in political issues, which led her to be the president of the National Association of Pro-America. As well as this, in 1977, she was one of 8 women to go to the Houston conference and spoke on behalf of women in Ohio. This was a huge achievement for her. One thing that stood out to me was the fact that her mother once said to her, "You will only have a home if you stay at home and work at it. That's where the happiness lies." Obviously, nowadays, we would say that's quite a sexist comment, which I completely agree with, because I'm a woman who has many aspirations for the future.
Our next student is Janna Sawyer from the College of New Jersey. Her mentor was Dr. Marla L. Joksch.
Hi, everyone. So my delegate was Patricia Garland. She is a Black Catholic woman who was born on September 17th, 1933 in Kansas. For her undergraduate degree, she attended the University of Pittsburgh, and later on she completed her master's in education from Wichita State University. After she graduated, she had 2 kids while remaining an active member of her community. One example of her involvement was her role as the chapter president for the Beta Kappa Omega chapter of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. At the beginning of 1971, she wrote for her local paper, the Wichita Eagle, arguing against Christian missionaries converting indigenous communities. For 15 years, she worked in childcare and education. Her passion in education was evident through her participation in the National Association for Education of Young Children Conference in 1973. A few years later, when she was 44 years old, she attended the National Women's Conference in Houston, Texas. At this time, she was working as a program specialist for the State Department of Health and Environment in Topeka. She was the second Black woman on the delegation for Kansas, and she was endorsed by the Kansas Coordinating Committee. She supported the Equal Rights Amendment, which reflects the broader themes of freedom and activism that defined her life. After the National Women's Conference, she stayed very active in her community. She did work with her local library involving genealogy and local history. Patricia is still alive and well, enjoying retirement with her husband and her daughter in Wichita. You can go to the next slide. So I just have a little quote here from her. I'll read it aloud. She said, "I was looking out for myself at first, I guess. I think I'd say I was liberated the day I went to work. I'm real sick about people thinking women ought to stay home. I think people have to make choices on the basis of what is best for them." And that was about her involvement in the women's movement and her attendance at the conference. Thank you.
Our next student is Tanner Burnett from Colby College. Their mentor is Dr. Andrea Brow.
Hello, everybody. So for this project, I researched Susan Cohen. She was born on March 14th, 1942 in Auburn, New York, to her parents, Ray and Pearl. And for most of her early life, after graduation, she worked at the Geneva General Hospital. Later in life, she was a restaurant owner, and she was a central community figure for women in need. Many of the more lesser-known stories, such as people finding her name that were in very bad marriages, they had kids, they didn't know what to do, they were trying to get out. She would help these people find the resources they needed. So on top of all of her formal activism, she was really just a woman to help women, which was, she made very explicit to me when I talked to her. She did not consider herself a feminist. And she was very active in Democratic politics starting early on in her career when she began working for local Democratic campaigns and then moved on and ran as a delegate for the Carter Convention, was on the advisory board of the Women's Division of the New York State Democratic Committee, and ran the Northern New York campaign for both Marianne Krebsack and Bella Asbuk. So she heard about the conference when she was in Krebsack's office. She received almost 2,000 votes at the preliminary conference in New York and attended as a recorder. Which means that she would record things that were pertinent to New York at the time. So she supported the ERA, was against unequal pay, difficulty for unmarried women, and equal professional opportunities for women. Next slide, please. So after the conference, she continued her community work, raised her 3 children, Leslie, Jonah, and Josh, in addition to working part-time for Krebsack. And in 1992, she opened the Cobblestone restaurant in Geneva with Krebsack, which they sold in 2015, and they lived together in Geneva until, unfortunately, Marianne's death in December or January of this year. And when I asked her about how she managed to keep up with all of her responsibilities, she said, "If you believe in the causes and the things you care about and the life you've chosen, you keep doing it. Nothing seems too hard. Nothing seems too tough when you're doing what you believe in. Everything is possible." Thank you.
Our next 3 video presentations will come from Caroline Dutton, whose mentor was Dr. Jamie Wagman from St. Mary's College, Bianca De La Cruz, whose mentor was Dr. Caitlin Weisner from Mercy University, and Arielle Mittwol, whose mentor was Dr. Nancy Carnival from Montclair State University.
Hi, my name is Caroline Dutton. I'm a senior at St. Mary's College, and I'm majoring in history with minors in humanistic studies and the digital and public humanities. And last spring, I had the opportunity to contribute to the Sharing Stories project. I had the privilege of researching Michelle McRae. Michelle was a delegate from the state of Indiana, and she was originally born in Louisville, Kentucky in 1948. She was elected president of Indiana Right to Life, an anti-abortion group, in 1977 after serving as president of the Southern Indiana chapter for several years. She was president of the organization during her time at the conference and continued her work with Right to Life until 1982 when she moved back to Kentucky to work as a teacher. She stayed very active, however, and was the communications director for a lobbying group called Hoosiers for Economic Development. Michelle currently resides in St. Augustine, Florida. For me, this project really emphasized the importance of sharing the stories of a wide variety of women and what the conference represented for them. Thank you.
My name is Bianca De La Cruz. I'm a sophomore at Mercy studying criminal justice, and this is my New York State delegate. Mary Burke Nicholas was a trailblazer in social justice advocacy, dedicating her life to fighting systemic inequities in housing, women's rights, and LGBTQ activism. Nicholas moved to New York to pursue a career in city planning, determined to build equitable communities. She quickly rose the ranks in becoming the first head female economist in the Department of Housing and Urban Developments. In this role, she fought against discriminatory housing practices that excluded marginalized communities from safe and affordable housing. Her efforts helped shape fair housing policies, ensuring greater access to homeownership and rental opportunities for people of color, low-income families, and other underserved communities. Her leadership extended beyond housing. She was appointed by Governor Hugh Carey to lead New York State Women Division, where she worked tirelessly to advance policies that promoted women's economic independence, workplace equality, and representation in government. She believed women's voices needed to be heard in policymaking and fought to remove systemic barriers that kept them from this leadership role. Nicholas also played a crucial role in LGBTQ advocacy at the time, when many leaders hesitated to take a stand. She understood that LGBTQ rights were deeply connected to the broader fight for equality and actively pushed the policies that protect the communities from discrimination. A key part of her legacy was the ability to build coalitions. She worked alongside activists from various backgrounds to unify social justice movements, strengthening their collective impact. Her involvement in the National Women's Conference demonstrated her belief in the system, where she advocated for policy shifts that would ensure women had opportunities to shape public policy. During the National Women's Conference of 1977, she was not only a delegate, but a head coordinating chair. She advocated for childcare, housing assistance so that women, mothers, could come from all over and join in the discussions and allow their voices to be heard.
Hi, my name is Arielle Mittwol. I attend Montclair State University, and I was assigned Betty J. Powell as a delegate to research. Born in 1940 and unfortunately passing in 2022 from COVID-19, Betty Powell spent her 82 years of life as an extremely accomplished founding member of several activist organizations. Specifically, the Gay Academic Union, the National Black Feminist Organization, the National LGBTQ Task Force, the National Coalition of Black Lesbians and Gays, the National Gay Task Force, Salsa Soul Sisters, and the Estrella Lesbian Foundation for Justice. Prior to her passing, Mrs. Powell gave an interview which has been archived by Smith College, in which she provided a wealth of stories about her early life and later activism, as well as her participation in the National Women's Conference. She was a remarkable woman, and she continues to inspire to this day.
Our next student is Izabella Kopacz, who is from Union College of Union County, New Jersey, whose mentor is Dr. Michelle Rotunda.
Hello, everyone. My name is Izabella Kopacz, and I'm currently a non-matriculated student at Union College of Union County, New Jersey. I received my associate's degree in visual arts, but I'll be transferring into a comparative literature program in the fall. I want to start off by thanking my mentor, Dr. Michelle Rotunda, for helping me throughout this entire process, as this opportunity has been both insightful toward conducting research, but also my own place within academia. My delegate is Bosanka Ivosevic from Pennsylvania. She was born on January 7th, 1932 in Pittsburgh to Serbian immigrants. She was an academic woman and earned her degrees at Wilson College and the University of Pittsburgh, and engaged in studies ranging from English, German, women's studies, urban planning, and more. When it came to her career, she worked as a high school teacher. She co-owned her mother's eponymous Serbian restaurant called Sarah's, and she also ran for city council and the Pennsylvania Senate. As for the International Women's Year Conference, she served as Pennsylvania delegate and an arrangements chair for the coordinating committee. She ended up dying at the age of 50 on October 18th, 1982. All right, next slide. As for my takeaway, one of the things that hit close to home for me while conducting this research was the reality of name anglicization that a lot of immigrants go through. When I was looking at Ivosevic's earlier life, she was referred to as Bertha, her middle name, but later in life she was published under the name Bosanka in newspapers. And I felt that she held her ethnic background close to her in a society where historically one of the methods to thrive was by washing it away. But she didn't do that and even readopted it. And as someone with an unconventional name myself, it meant a lot to me. And throughout this project, I was given the opportunity to conduct research, uh, not done before as a community college student, with the biography I wrote, hopefully elevating the story of someone who is a lot like me and impacted her community immensely. And as for comparative literature, I felt that my research with her, she was a very small scale version of this idea of bridging cultures, finding similarities, differences, but ultimately what we can learn from each other. And yes, thank you so much.
Our next student is Hayden Reeves from Georgia Southern University. Their mentor is Dr. Julie Deschantal.
My name is Hayden Reeves, and I'm a senior at Georgia Southern University. I completed my research on Sharing Stories 1977 with Dr. Deschantal, who is a public history professor at my university. At the start of my research in 2024, I was assigned 11 Georgia delegates who attended the National Women's Conference out of a pool of 34 women. They were elected at the Georgia State meeting in May of 1977, which is where they also debated on different propositions and resolutions pertaining to the lives of Georgia women, including the support for or opposition to the Equal Rights Amendment, abortion rights, Black women's issues, and aging women's issues, among others. I used local and online archives to document their lives from the ground up, digging deep into the newspapers and genealogical records to locate any crumb of information I could find. This challenge forced me to think creatively about sources and where one could find information about these delegates. It was honestly a blast playing detective into the lives of these women who had almost been forgotten by history. Next slide, please. After extensively researching and writing biographies for the 11 delegates I was assigned, I noticed that a particular pattern emerged. The delegates of Georgia represented more than just the lives of women. They also represented the growing kaleidoscope of ideologies that the state has shown over the past 10 years. Although there was a larger representation of white homemaker women, a small but mighty pool of highly educated women of color and other minority groups broke away from the more conservative ideas shared by the older, predominantly white political circles of Georgia. These women, particularly Dr. Rosa Stanback, Dr. Vivian Hunt, lawyer Tobianne Schwartz, and AARP President Vita Ostrander, changed the definition of what it meant to be a woman in Georgia. They advocated for the lives of other disadvantaged and underrepresented communities while also leading their personal lives of philanthropy and hospitality. With this first step into a more diverse representation of women at a political level, the foundations were laid for further grounds to achieve and barriers to break. 50 years later, Georgia has grown dramatically more diverse and purple since the National Women's Conference of 1977, and it continues to diversify and show its true colors. Thank you, guys.
Our next presentation is from Ruixi Bao, who is from Sacred Heart Preparatory High School. Their mentor was Miss Serene Williams.
Oh, hello, my name is Ruixi Bao, and I'm happy to be here today. My representative was a woman called Linda McFessel at the time of the conference. Now she's been remarried and called Linda E. Koenig. She was born in 1941 and is a delegate from Charleston, West Virginia. She's a teacher, activist, and also government member in her lifetime. Next page, please. So Linda Koenig was born November 20th, 1941 in Charleston, West Virginia, and her inspiration for activism began during her childhood. She was treated very differently from many other men around her in her life. For example, when she had a brother, her brother was expected to kind of take up the family profession of being a doctor and kind of follow in his father's footsteps while she wasn't given much direction. Additionally, in high school, even though she performed as well as the boys in her class at tennis, she wasn't allowed to join the tennis team. So she kind of had to play on her own. And that was why she was interested in activism. After graduating from high school, she became an educator of psychology at a local college, Morris Harvey College. And during that, she got more into activism. She started many conferences and discussion groups in that college of talking about women's rights. Additionally, during that time, she's participated in and aided the founders of NOW and NWPC, National Organization for Women, and the National Women's Political Caucus. And additionally, she got some jobs as a representative at state level projects for West Virginia. She was on the Charleston City Council. She was a city manager of Charleston, and this was later on, but she was actually selected by the Reagan administration to be the local secretary for urban development in the 80s, which was really interesting. She attended the 1977 Women's Conference after being selected due to being recognized for her political stances and being in the government. She heavily supported the ERA, and at the National Women's Conference, she was influenced and moved by Barbara Jordan. She really liked her confidence and her ideas. After the conference, she moved to Missouri, where she still lives to this day and is still alive, and teaches women's history at local museums and still educates people on her experiences as an activist. I chose this quote for her because I thought it was really interesting because as a history student, right? Back in the day, there was a lot of talk about the 1977 conference, but after it kind of passed and the ERA wasn't able to be passed, which was very disappointing for Ms. Koenig. A lot of people ended up forgetting about the 1977 conference, which is really unfortunate. And I think that's what inspired me to take on this project in the first place, to kind of spread the story of others. So such an important conference and a landmark case for women's history in the United States, women's rights, won't be forgotten. Thank you.
Our next 3 video presentations will come from Morgan Zuccaro, whose mentor was Dr. Sarah Case. They are from the University of California, Santa Barbara. Amisha Rahman, their mentor was Dr. Eliza Lane Martin. They are from Georgia State University. And Lena Lipani, whose mentor was Dr. Kelly Anderson. They're from Smith College.
Hi, my name is Morgan Zuccaro. I'm a history major at the University of California, Santa Barbara, and I was given the opportunity to research participant Jessie B. Mosley. Dr. Jessie Bryant Mosley was born and raised in Houston, Texas on November 30th, 1903, where she then received both her bachelor and doctorate degrees in teaching and library sciences at Jarvis Christian College. Her career is marked by her significant work as a social science teacher in Jackson, Mississippi. Her hands-on experience working with African American youth influenced her passions to encourage a rise in the educational awareness and appreciation of Black Mississippian social history. Her political engagements included her role as committee chair for the Federation of Colored Women's Club and treasurer of Women Power Unlimited, where she worked alongside her husband, Dr. Charles Clint Mosley, to provide support and safe houses for the Freedom Riders during the early 1960s. Mosley was also a founding member of the National Parliamentarian and state convener of the National Council of Negro Women Jackson chapter. Dr. Mosley was elected on February 26, 1977 as Mississippi Committee Chair for the National Women's Conference. Upon elections for the NWC, Mosley was listed as a third alternate volunteer, receiving a total of 309 votes. Of the elected Mississippian delegates, Mosley was the only Black woman and one of 4 women over the age of 56 years old. She was the first woman elected to not be represented by anti-era support. Mosley was later appointed by the Minority Caucus as one of 6 women that served as a delegate at large. She recorded her support of the Equal Rights Act. Mosley published several other works and was the founding director of the preservation of the Smith Robertson Museum and Cultural Center in Jackson. She was also the recipient of the Carter G. Woodson Book Award. I found it to be an absolute honor to receive the opportunity to research this remarkable individual who served a lifetime for the equality and recognition of Black youth and Black history. Her role within the 1977 National Women's Conference highlighted her perseverance through racial and age discrimination while she gracefully navigated leadership amongst powerful and iconic women. Thank you.
My name is Amisha, and I'm currently a senior at Georgia State University. I'm majoring in nursing, and I took Women in U.S. History with Dr. Eliza Martin back in summer of 2024. There, I was assigned my delegate, Mary Swellman Reed, who was born on March 25, 1951, and graduated from the University of Missouri with a journalism degree in 1973. She began her career at the Jackson Sun, serving as the editor of the family section before becoming a features editor, and she also interned at the St. Paul Pioneer Press Dispatch. Dedicated to her community, she co-founded the Jackson Area Rape Assistance Program and volunteered with the United Way. Her advocacy work inspired her to run as a delegate for the 1977 National Women's Conference, where she focused on abortion rights, violence against women, and legal counsel for rape victims. She also supported efforts to balance male-to-female teacher ratios. In 1991, Mary founded Weed Marketing, earning awards like the Sterling Award in 2013 and the Southern Journalism Award for Investigative Reporting in 1990. Due to her work in the Women's Rape Assistance Program, she also earned a Monarch Award.
Hi there, my name is Lena Lipani and I'm a first-year student at Smith College. My Sharing Stories delegate was Fern Green and I'm so excited to share a little bit about her today. Fern Green was born in Stillwater, Oklahoma on January 8, 1940 and is currently 84 years old. She attended the conference at 37 years old as a Protestant and was against the ERA, and her listed current jobs were working as the Director of Educational Equity Services of the State Department of Vocational Technical Education, a homemaker, and a farmer. Her career after the conference was extensively involved with the Oklahoma state government. And I was actually able to reach Fern via phone with the same phone number listed on the delegate application, and she shared an extremely interesting story with me. Fern claimed that the Oklahoma delegates stayed on the 4th floor of the Hyatt Regency, and on the first night the fire alarms went off during the middle of the night. She told me from that point on, they all collectively decided to stay on the 1st floor instead. An exceptional accomplishment under Fern's belt is her award named after her, titled the Fern Award, given to an outstanding female entrepreneur by the Women's Business Center of Rural Enterprises, Oklahoma. This project without a doubt has given me insight into what life was like for these women at the conference who simply wanted more for themselves despite their politics. I see that drive reflected in many of my peers today, especially at Smith College, who continue to fight for the opportunities and rights they deserve. I have learned so much from Fern's groundbreaking leadership, and the personal value I have derived from this work is invaluable to me. Thank you.
Our next student presenter is Carley Saah from James Madison University. Their mentor was Dr. Emily Westcamper.
Hi there, I'm really excited to be here. When I initially began this research project as a part of my women's history class with Dr. Westcamper, I anticipated that it was just going to be another assignment to complete for a grade. I quickly realized that it wasn't going to be that way, and I developed a profound appreciation for the women who have fought tirelessly for equality among all women and specifically for educational rights. One such woman is Joan DeGennaro, a distinguished advocate who has dedicated her life's work to supporting women in education and STEM programs. She holds 3 advanced degrees, a Bachelor of Arts from Purdue University, a Master's of Science from the University of Maryland, and a Juris Doctor from George Mason University. While at George Mason, Joan applied to be a delegate for the National Women's Conference in 1977. Although she was elected as an alternate delegate to represent Virginia, she ultimately did not attend. This kind of steered my research in another direction. Nevertheless, I can only imagine that her passion for equal education would have been a central issue that she would have raised at the conference if she had participated. In 1983, Joan founded the Center for Excellence in Education, also known as the CEE, to support the development of STEM education and provide funding for related programs. Through the CEE, the CEE offers high school students a 5-week internship to conduct research alongside mentors. Additionally, she had expanded her efforts internationally, collaborating with countries like Bulgaria to establish STEM programs there. The CEE also collaborated with Purdue University to host the first USA Bio Olympiad in 2010 to challenge high school students in scientific competitions to enrich their education outside of the classroom. If you don't mind going to the next slide. Although I'm not a history major or a minor, Joan's work has been an incredible source of inspiration to me throughout my time as an undergraduate at JMU and as a future speech-language pathologist. Her emphasis on the importance of education beyond the classroom has reinforced my belief that real-life experiences offer invaluable lessons. Moreover, her dedication to securing a strong educational foundation for women during a time when higher education was often out of reach has had a lasting impact on me as well. These takeaways are good reminders to myself and others that on the positive impact of educational experiences such as this showcase and the ways in which women can work to make a difference for others in the future. Joan DeGennaro's initiatives, which have helped shape the future of STEM education for women, are a testament to the power of determination and advocacy. Through this project, I have gained a deeper understanding of the lasting influence of those who fight for positive change even when their efforts may not always be in the spotlight. And thank you all for listening and for the opportunity.
Our final presenter will be Maurice Seume from the University of Houston. Their mentors were Doctors Nancy Beck Young and Leandra Zarnow.
Hi, I am a master's student of anthropology at the University of Houston. I have worked on the Sharing Stories project both as an undergraduate intern and as a graduate research assistant. And today I'm presenting on Miss Linda Smith, whom I had the great pleasure of conducting an oral history with during my time as an intern. Linda K. Smith was born in April of 1947 in Little Rock, Arkansas. Her schooling consisted of attending Bel Air High School and graduating in the class of 1965, as well as attending South Texas Junior College and getting her BA in education in 1971. As a career, Linda Smith was a teacher of elementary and middle school science. Her advocacy included working as either a judge or a clerk in every election since 1986. She was also a part of the National Organization for Women. Her role at the National Women's Conference was as a volunteer, and her most memorable National Women's Conference moments were Margaret Mead's workshop, as well as the opening ceremonies for the conference. I wanted to include Margaret Mead's workshop because as an anthropologist, Margaret Mead is a very influential figure in my discipline. Next slide, please. Some fun facts about Miss Smith is that she was adopted at 5 months old by her parents, Mr. and Mrs. George. She moved to a home in West University, Texas in 1952, where she celebrated her 5th birthday. Miss Smith was also able to celebrate her 75th birthday in the backyard of the very same family home. Miss Smith is very passionate about human and civil rights as well as the environment. She was friends with Linda Pokey Anderson, who was a lesbian advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, and they bonded over both being adopted. When she was with Linda Pokey Anderson at the National Women's Conference, she was actually recorded as a part of a documentary holding a sign that says, "We are everywhere," we being lesbians, even though she wasn't a lesbian herself. And I wanted to include a couple quotes from the oral history with Miss Smith today that go as follows. My definition of a feminist is a person who believes in the social, political, and economic equality of women and men. This is a definition that I embrace. The National Women's Conference really was like being a lifelong baseball fan and going to the World Series and sitting behind home plate. And she also said, when asked for any advice to give to future generations, to vote like your life depends on it. Do everything you can for as long as you can to save democracy. Thank you.
Hi, before we get to our Q&A session, I would like to say the names of the two students whose I did not introduce even though their videos were played. So that will be Alex M. Jones from Eastern Illinois University. Their mentor was Dr. Bonnie Laughlin Schultz. And Izzy Gardiner from Merrimack College. Their mentor was Dr. Deborah Mickles. And this concludes the presentation portion of our event. We have been collecting questions from the public audience, and we will get to them soon. But we do have some special guests on this Zoom who were present at the conference in 1977, and we would love to welcome them to start off our Q&A session if they have any questions for our researchers. Well, I have a question. For those of you who were able to conduct oral histories, can you tell me what it was like to be able to hear from a subject that is still living and you were also doing research on them, and how did it impact you as a researcher?
So I did an oral history. It was honestly a really amazing experience. Miss Smith, throughout the oral history at times had gotten emotional when talking about major events that she's lived through, such as the MLK Jr. assassination. And she was able to kind of walk us through a lot of the United States history that she's lived through, and her admiration for the women at the conference and for the conference itself was a really amazing thing.
Anybody else who conducted an oral history interview, would you like to speak about your experience?
Yeah, so I also got the opportunity to conduct an oral interview with Miss Koenig. I think it was really nice being able to just speak with her one-on-one. I was able to get a lot more interesting details that I don't think I would have if I just did research without like getting to ask her about all of her unique experiences. Because a lot of stuff isn't recorded, right? A lot of the personal information. So yeah, I got to learn from her a lot more, and that was really interesting.
Oh, Dr. Zarna has a question for y'all. What was the most wild or surprising thing that you found out about your delegate that you might not have been able to include in your biography? I know some of these delegates had some wild stories, guys. I know you found out some juicy stuff.
I can go into I didn't have a lot of time to go into it in my presentation, but I can go into hold on, sorry, I'm kind of bad speaking, but how my delegate, Ms. Renteria, confronted that politician. Uh, is that all right?
Of course, please. I'd love to hear about it.
Okay. So this was around August 1971 this was during her time in the United Migrant Opportunity Service. Around 200 migrant workers showed up at a meeting with his name is with the governor Patrick J. Lucey. These workers were upset with the conditions of their jobs, and they were launching protests and marches. And at this meeting, Lucey was responding to those protests and marches. He promised that he and his team would be ready to meet whatever demands the migrants wanted, which included equal employment opportunities, equal treatment from the officers in state law, and equal opportunity for civil service jobs. However, many of the migrant workers felt that the promises were not followed through. And when the chairman of the Department of Industry, Labor, and Human Relations, Philip Lernon, attempted to defend Lucey and his group by pointing out the progress that he made, listing like the small incremental changes that were made. Ms. Renteria interrupted, saying, and I quote, "You're wasting our time and yours to continue a recital of all the bills you have passed. They are all ineffective, so why continue the litany?" And I just thought that was really bold, and another thing that inspired me when I was researching her.
Thank you so much, Jillian. It's great when they inspire us. Izabella, can you tell us about your?
Yeah, so one of the things that I think was pretty interesting, I can't remember if I did put it in my biography or not, but I mentioned that my delegate's mother had a restaurant that the delegate co-owned. And something that was really interesting in my research was finding out that apparently President Jimmy Carter and Robert De Niro visited the restaurant themselves, and like there was this whole thing in the papers like, oh, Jimmy Carter like didn't pay the bill or something, and it was like this whole thing that got out of proportion in the papers. But it was really interesting to find that kind of thing. And this is like again more small, and it's not something that's like as wild, but I think in terms of understanding how newspapers worked back in the day, at one point I just found this article about like, oh, like she sprained her ankle and she had to go to the hospital. And so they'd have little things like that in the paper just being like, hey, this is this person's injury. Should just so you guys know. So it's very interesting to see how those functioned back in the day. But yeah, that's like some of the interesting things I found through my research.
Yeah, interesting things that were published back then, but they do help us who are doing history these days, which is really nice. So we have a question from the audience. So this is from Cindy Cole. They were active in the women's movement in 1977. As someone active in the women's movement in 1977, it is very exciting to hear the research of young students. Did any of the delegates who opposed the ERA speak to the irony of their own extensive activism outside the home or their commitment to careers in political activity? For anyone who had a delegate who opposed the ERA, can you speak to this?
I can speak a little bit on this. So my delegate, she was the alternate. She was from the state of Virginia, and most of Virginia they supported the ERA, and she did not. However, she was really young at the time. She was still a student, and that was really the only involvement that I found about her involving the National Women's Conference. But now that I've done a lot more research on her life after her involvement, I could assume that she would have supported the ERA. She ended up doing a lot of advocating for women in STEM programs through her work with the Center of excellence in education. So I wish I could have had the opportunity to speak with her one-on-one so that I could have heard her experience now, but I could have assumed that she might have changed her mind or um, seen differently at this point in her life.
Thank you, Carly. We have a question from one of the delegates, Lena Brooks. How have any of you students become interested in women's history or in women's rights?
I can go again if that's okay.
That would be great, Jillian. Thank you.
So I became interested in women's rights and women's history. Well, I've always been interested in history, but specifically, uh, right, I think I was around 11. That was when the crushing realization of how awfully women are treated just about everywhere set in. And also kind of when it set in that I didn't really know a lot of women's stories. So ever since then, I found I found I made it sorry. Whenever I could, I'd look at interesting sources like the Night Witches. Yes, I always get that mixed up with the Night Sisters from Star Wars. And any other women's group like this National Women's Conference, just to educate myself and I guess learn more about who we were uh, before, well, today. Thank you.
Thank you, Jillian. Izabella?
So I think for me, my interest, I ha had a very like prolonged interest in women's rights since I was really young. I think one of the first memories, me personally, that I have in women's rights is when I was like younger, maybe around 13. We had like a school project that we could choose, and I did it on people who were pregnant in their teens because I wanted to see, and a lot of people were like very confused, like the 13 years olds in my class, because they were like, why would you do something like that? But I really wanted to kind of interrogate the material reality and conditions that those types of people faced because I just remember like seeing something about it and I was like, how is someone my age, around my age, being able to have a child and raise that child? And so it really got me thinking of both those kinds of conditions today and in the past. And also being from another country, because my family's background is from Poland, there are a lot of times where we deal with those kinds of rights, those issues. And I've been, thankfully, in a sense, kind of exposed to it where we would have those conversations, what are these conditions, what rights do women have? And so I guess in a sense, I've been exposed to it in a way that makes me really thankful. So I've always been really attuned to that. But yeah.
Thank you so much, Izabella. Marie?
Sorry. I just wanted to add that for as long as I could remember, I've been a very loud and proud kind of woman. And I think throughout my life, the more pushback I got about being opinionated and strong-minded, the more passionate I became about women's rights and about feminism. And I'm actually writing my master's thesis on a topic within feminism. But I will also say that the first time I learned about the National Women's Conference was when I started doing this project with sharing stories. But it has been an interest of mine for as long as I can remember.
Thank you, Mary. Bianca?
So I can completely agree with Mary. I've always been passionate about women's rights and women's work in general. And I think starting off college, I wrote a thesis or a research paper on medical racism, especially for women in medical fields. And I think that really pushed me forward into looking more into women, how their work has been perceived and how their whole life has been changed through intersectionality, whether it be in homes or outside of it. And I always found it very fascinating. And I think this project really pushed me more into the research side and archiving and how things are taken care of and preserved. So I just wanted to say that.
Awesome. Thank you, Bianca. Does anyone else want to speak to their interest in women's history or women's rights? If not, I have another question. So another question from our audience is for those who did not conduct an oral history, and to those who did as well, you can answer this. But what types of sources did you find most helpful in your research process? Thank you, Isabella.
So for me, I wasn't able to conduct an oral history because my delegate had passed away, but I was actually able to find a lot, thankfully, due to digitized archives. And so I was able to find newspapers with mentions of my delegate. And it was very also useful in a sense because my delegate had a very, for America, very unconventional name. So I didn't like have the issue of like, oh, there was like somebody else in the area with the same name. So those newspapers were very vital to being able to construct that kind of timeline and understanding how her life went. There were some other records that I wasn't able to access, but thankfully, because I had those newspapers, I think those are what really helped me build that biography. And I would have really loved to do the oral history, but thankfully, I didn't have to be able to understand her story.
Awesome. Thank you, Hayden.
Hello. One of the most important sources that I was able to find a lot of my information from was Ancestry.com. That website was my best friend throughout this entire process. It not only helped me get access to census records, but also other kinds of like connections with genealogical records and stuff. So Ancestry was a really great source for me. And then another really great source was just dissertations and other things that are published specifically for people who get their PhDs. I had one woman who I was struggling to find some stuff on, and then my professor helped me find her dissertation, and that gave me a ton of information, and it helped me get to the ending that I needed. So dissertations and Ancestry.com were the best ones that I had.
You guys are hearing it now. Newspapers, Ancestry.com, dissertations. Bianca, can you speak to your sources?
So I did use Ancestry.com. I used a lot of newspapers.com because most of her work was written in newspapers, but I also looked at, unironically, the NYPD history. Because she worked with them a lot when it came to coalitions and helping with different communities. So it was really cool seeing the aspects of something that could be so simple moving into bigger areas or even sections of life you wouldn't expect.
Awesome. There is another question. So someone noticed that several of y'all are not history students. So they would like to ask, how have you applied the skills that you used in your research process to your major or other classes that are not history?
I don't know if you can see me. Oh, there we go. All right. Um I am an anthropology major and I'm kind of taking the route of going into forensics, and that requires a lot of investigation work. So I think that this project kind of helped me get started on that kind of work. When I went into it, I was hitting a lot of dead ends. I was having a lot of issues with finding information on my delegate. But eventually I started learning about all these different sources. My mom helped me get onto newspapers.com, of course. I was able to get into Ancestry and learn how to use that. And all of that, I think, is really going to help prepare me for the future as I continue to work in forensic anthropology.
So we have a question from one of the mentors of a student who asked, what kind of challenges did you face while doing your research?
I think that the biggest challenge would probably be considering a lot of these women might have been really young, their last names changed. So my person in particular, her last name changed from Nicholas Burt to Nicholas Washington. And so it kind of changed the trajectory of how I was looking for her and how I decided I wanted to go finding her. Because again, her name is kind of basic in a way, so it really became hard. So I found photographs, I found sources specifically layered to her work and the groups that she was in.
So one of the things that I found challenging was that there were some um, sources that I found that I couldn't access digitally, and that if I had wanted to see them, I would have to go to Pittsburgh, which was not ideal, and I ended up, not being able to do that. So I think one of the challenges is that, of course, especially depending on how far you are from where your delegate was, um, it's hard to be able to access some of those sources. So you never know if there's something that you might have lost because of that like specific article or source not being digitized.
I mentioned it in my presentation, but one of the things I did run into was the fact that there were two Juanita Renterias. One of the sources I used was also newspaper.com. Dr. Stengel was kind enough to let me use her login, and all of us actually used her login. And I found so many articles with Juanita Renteria. I'm like, oh, this is great. And then I looked at like, this is not the same information as the other Juanita Renteria. What is going on? So I had to sort of differ, words, you know what I mean, between the two. It's another one that I ran into which was discussed previously was physical, trying to access media that was, I think it was in Philadelphia. I do not remember. I remember struggling looking for an image to use of Ms. Renteria, but and I did find one eventually, but it wasn't the one that I'm using currently. It was in one of the libraries in the near the East Coast. So I would have had to figure out how to get access to that if I wanted to get an image because I struggled finding an image. Luckily, I found a different one also in the newspaper. I also struggled with trying to find information on Juanita or Ms. Renteria's life before and after her activism, like where she was born, how she died, stuff like that. I had to sift through a lot of different search combinations to figure out to find specifically the two sources that I found that were really helpful in those regards were the Hispanic News Network USA blog and I think LULAC News was a different source. I do not remember. It's been a while, but those were the challenges I faced.
Okay, everyone, thank you all for answering your questions. Thank you for the great questions from our audience. We have one final question I would like to finish with from one of the delegates, Lena Burke. She is asking all you researchers, how can we all promote women having a great and positive presence in society today?
I think that one of the big ways is that when even like in small like group settings, in whether it's in your career, in your academics, and you're in a kind of group and understanding the power your own voice might have to try to elevate someone else. When you see somebody who might go to speak and then maybe they stop, just showing interest, saying like, hey, like what is it that you want to say? What do you have to say? Um, being someone who helps elevate other people's voices because you never know how somebody like just kind of almost speaking but not getting there, how much pressure can be on them. So I think that's one way of making sure that we can promote people's voices being heard. And another thing that kind of comes to mind is I think a lot of the time, there's already like these prominent male figures who are being researched. And I think taking the time to think when you're doing a project, even if it's like, of course, not related to women directly or it's not related to history, just taking the time to think, where were the women who worked on this? Whether it's in STEM fields, humanities fields, kind of think and zone your efforts to, okay, we know about these men, where are these women? I think that those are kind of aspects that will allow for women having this positive presence in society.
I love that answer. Thank you. Would anyone else like to offer an answer? Okay, I think that is a great point to end on. So we have two final slides to get to. So thank you. This was a presentation from the U of H Center for Public History, which is Making History Matter in Houston, where the local is global. You can find us at this website, uvh.edu/clash/CPH. Yes, and a special thanks to our outstanding student presenters that were nominated by They're dedicated mentors for this national showcase. Please scan the QR code to be taken to our Sharing Stories 1977 website. You can explore the bios that are done by the students. You can explore maps and demographic data. It is truly amazing. I highly recommend it. And thank you again to our outstanding students. Thank you to the NWC participants who were able to be here tonight and take time out of your evenings to hear what these students had to say, and to everyone else in the audience, thank you.